Welcome back to Call of the Father. I just really appreciate everybody who's been listening, and please tell friends, tell people that you think might benefit from this. If it's touching you, I just want to touch and help people, encourage them to heal. Today, I want to talk about emotions and feelings. That's something that growing up, I had a hard time ever feeling emotions and feelings, and it's something that you've probably, if you've been listening, you've heard me talk about crying over something that wasn't the way I grew up, and that wasn't the way that I was never able to do that growing up. It just wasn't like that with the things that I experienced as a child, with abandonment from my mom and just a big disconnect. She went through a lot. I know that she was physically abused in a lot of ways. I'm sure that she was sexually abused, and there were some really horrific things on that side of the family, and she was unable to connect with me and my sister. It was like, even seeing now, if I'm around her, it just is weird. It's so disconnected, unable to connect emotionally. There's just a lot there. Anyway, with that, and with the way that my dad would discourage feeling anything, it was inconvenient to him if I had emotions or my sister had emotions. There was always the get over it, and just really belittled and just make you feel like it's shameful to display your feelings. So I even remember, I remember when I was in middle school or high school, and I lived with my dad then. I lived with my mom through like 6th grade, and then I wanted to go live with my dad, and I did. And I remember then thinking one day about how things were with my mom, that she's never nurturing or connected or showed love in certain ways, validation. I just remember thinking that that wasn't normal, and I saw people with moms who were connected and validated their feelings. And one thing that I always was aware of my low self-esteem or lack of belief in myself and confidence. And when I was around other people, friends, I'd see just displays in their behavior that I was like, holy crap, that's really confident and just self-assured. And I didn't know where that came from. I remember thinking, where does that come from? Now I see it clearly. It's validation of feelings when from the time you're little. They say you're in a theta brainwave state until about the age of 7. You're learning so many things, taking in so many things. And I think, as I've said before, you validate a child's feelings, even when from the outside you see the whole situation. It might seem ridiculous on the level that you're at. You wouldn't, as an adult, they're not seeing the whole picture, but their feelings are real. I say this often: your feelings are real because you feel them. And it takes no other justification for your feelings. Nobody should ever tell you your feelings are BS, or it's just invalidating someone's feelings is not right. And we grow by learning to validate our own feelings. And when a little kid is validated in their feelings, they learn to self-validate. And then, as I've said before, then they start to learn empathy and compassion for others. They realize, oh, well, I have feelings, they must have feelings. And they start to be able to reason. They learn reasoning that way and become well-rounded human beings, I believe. Anyway, back to when I was in middle school or high school, I remember thinking about the dynamic with my mom and what I didn't get from her and what I didn't have, and the connection that I wished I had had at that point is like that ship had sailed. But I remember consciously thinking that that was messed up, and having the conscious thought, I want to cry about this. Maybe I should just cry about this and feel this. And I tried, and I could not cry. I was unable to even drum up those emotions. That's how disconnected I was from my feelings at that point. So in my life, most of my childhood, growing up, and adulthood, like I rarely ever cried. There was just hardly anything could drum up emotions like that. Except one thing that would always just gets deep in my soul is motivational things. Stories like maybe the movie The Miracle, the U.S. hockey team in 1980, things like that. I watch motivational or inspirational stories of someone overcoming what seemed like impossible odds. That always just drums up emotions and feelings of, I don't know, it just really gets me. So girls always say they want the guy that would cry in a movie. I'm that guy. I get those emotions from movies and things like that. But other than that, like real life, I just could never feel those feelings. And as I was talking about last week with overcoming, maybe we're the one that needs to overcome. I think that's why I do get emotional over those types of stories, is that resonates deeply with me. I think the odds that I'm personally facing, and probably if you're listening, it's the same for you, the odds that I'm facing in this life and what I came here to do, they are impossible odds. If you look at the trauma that's been in my family line, it's crazy. My dad's a monster for a reason. What he grew up with, I think his mom was completely disconnected, and that wasn't her fault. I don't know what my grandpa went through, but I think that he kept my grandma drunk her whole life. And I think that he was afraid of losing her. And what led to him being so afraid of that abandonment? Like, she was a catch, from what I understand. She was a wardrobe madam for Jean Harlow and had a lot of things going on, was a beautiful woman. Then once he hooked her, he kept her drunk his whole life, her whole life, just afraid to lose. I think that's what the dynamic was there. And then for my dad and his siblings, they didn't really have a mom. That's the way that kind of works. And anyway, I think the odds that I came to overcome are nearly impossible. This goes back generations and generations, and that's why that resonates with me and makes me emotional. I'm here to do a job, and I'm going to break this cycle, and I want to encourage other people who are listening. If you're listening, thank you. I think you can do this too. Let's do it together. So back to the emotions, never being able to feel those things growing up, it was kind of strange when my marriage was coming to an end. It was really hard. I definitely, it was hard to accept that I wanted out. Literally deep down, I knew that I just wasn't happy. I couldn't connect with her the ways that I want. And a lot of those things aren't all her fault. I mean, with my programming, a codependent person as I was is a very manipulative person in ways that they don't even realize. Trying to get my needs met in that. I think that she was in a very difficult situation. I mean, highly narcissistic tendencies that she had and all, it was still a difficult position for anyone to be in, trying to love that unhealed version of me. It's a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation that isn't necessarily spoken to live up to. Anyway, I still remember the day that she'd taken my kids and went to see this guy, and and I kind of knew deep down what was going on, but I couldn't prove it, and there was a lot of don't question me. And anyway, I still remember when I was like, you need to come home, bring my kids home. And she came home, and I was like, we need to talk when you get here. And I just remember when she got home, I just was happy that my kids were home. I think deep down I knew it was over. And she's looking at me, and finally I was like, what? And she said, well, you said we need to talk. I was like, all right, you want to talk? Let's go in the other room and talk. And we went in there, and the first thing I asked her was, did you sleep with him? She said, and she just nodded. And I just walked out of the room. And I knew at that moment, I was never, like, that relationship, there was no hope. I was definitely not going to stay in that. That's just not something I'm ever going to do. But it was crushing, even though there was all this hope all along that it would work out, and that, from the time that I met her, that younger, stunted part of me that always wanted his needs met was looking to her to be my mom in a way. And I didn't know how to meet those needs for myself, so it brought a lot of pressure for her. There was a lot of hope all along, even when it was bad. There was all of that time that I spent with her, the hope that would be it. And even when I knew it was going bad, and then when that situation happened that day, it's devastating to think that's it. That didn't meet my needs, and that's the end of it. And anyway, she left, and it was hard. I had the kids here, and all of a sudden I'm like in panic mode. Like, what do? I got these kids I want to take care of, and I want them to be able to get through this. They'd said things over the years like we talk about divorce and other families and other kids going through hard things, and they didn't believe that would ever be them. That was hard to see my kids realize they were going through that now. And they said that'll never happen to us. I've heard them say that several times, and all of a sudden this is it. It's happening. And I'm scared. I'm like, how do I help my kids through this? And I knew that I had to heal, in a way is still a codependent line of thinking, but I'm thinking I got to take care of them. And so I thought I have to heal to help them. So it was right, but it was wrong. I definitely did need to do that. In order to help them, I needed to heal myself. I was like, shit, I got to heal fast to be here for my kids. I got to do this. And I don't know how I knew this, but right away, I knew I had to lean into the pain, and I had to feel my feelings, which I never knew how to do before. Something my whole life, I never knew how to do that. But I knew that I needed to do that, and it just happened. All of a sudden, I was able to connect with the pain and just sit and feel it, and it was one of the hardest things ever, but I cried a lot the first 3 months probably. I just cried a lot, and I just felt things, and I felt things for them. I cried for them, the things that they were feeling. And anyway, just that, connecting to my feelings that way, being able to cry, it kind of changed a lot of things, and it did help me heal. It did connect me to things, and I'm in some future episodes I'm going to go over there. One thing I want to go over is the day that I realized I was not bitter anymore toward my ex and the guy that she went with, and like it was a huge moment in my life. It was a big deal. Anyway, I just want to encourage people to connect to their feelings. Don't run from them. I think that one of the things that keeps us from connecting with our emotions is cognitive dissonance. Our bodies and our hearts know certain things, but our belief systems, like the way that I grew up, you know, it was shameful to feel your feelings or try to put that on anybody, you know, bring it up and bring it out. It's like, it was just a shameful thing. And so I adopted that as my own belief system. It was weakness and shameful to display your feelings or be in them and feel them. So, and it was an inconvenience to others. So with that belief system, deep down, I think I knew. It's like the day that I wanted to cry over what I didn't have with my mom, and I just couldn't. There was a disconnect between my thinking, my belief systems, and my heart and what was in my body. My whole body's telling me, yeah, that's right. But when your belief systems tell you different, that's cognitive dissonance. It keeps us from connecting with our hearts. And I think that our emotions and hearts and feelings are very powerful things. They're energy. And if we're able to connect with them, I think we're able to see a lot more things in life that we never saw before. As far as the my feelings and emotions and healing, and then how that connects with my kids and helping them, it definitely does. As I healed my emotions, it creates in me an ability to be compassionate and understanding of their feelings and emotions and help them through things in ways that I might not have been able to if I just stuck with the programming that I'd received, where it's shameful and I don't show my emotions. If I don't show my emotions, I'm showing my kids that I don't show my emotions, and they shouldn't show their emotions. They want to be like me, you know. And if I do show them that it's okay to feel your emotions and validate that, then they learn to do that. It did help with helping them heal. And unfortunately, they all face things at different points. My 16-year-old daughter, it was kind of weird. It was a delayed reaction. I feel bad about it. She's kind of felt like she had to be a caretaker for her mom and probably for me in some ways, and like be strong for the other kids. And so she kind of denied her feelings. But you know, as I healed, it did take time. And 3.5 years into it, it was like then she started to really face her own emotions. I feel like me healing created space for her to be able to finally feel her feelings. She subconsciously felt like, okay, Dad's okay, everybody's okay, things are going all right, I can deal with this now. And it was really hard to watch her just feel some of the things she felt. A lot of it had to do with the disconnect with her mom. And I can relate. Like, I've been through that. See how these generational cycles just keep going? I'm trying to break the cycle. It's not just me. It's a hard turnaround, turning that ship around. I'm trying to help my kids. They're the next part of it. And some of this is still trickling down to them. But as I'm healing, I'm helping them see that I'm modeling for them what to do, and they're able to do it. And by the time they have kids, hopefully it's a done deal. It's a broken cycle, and they can move things forward. Things are healed. My son, my youngest, he was 6 when she left, and that first year he came home from school one day and he didn't show a ton of emotion over it. He didn't, I don't know, he was I worried about him because he's quiet. Didn't really say what he was thinking or feeling. I had heard the girls say some things, but one day I was praying about him in the morning. I was really worried that he saw right from wrong, that he would know what's right and wrong. And this one morning I'm up really early and I'm just sitting on the couch and I'm praying about him. And he came out of his room and he shouldn't have been up yet. And he came and cuddled up next to me on the couch and he said, "I had a bad dream." And I said, "Oh yeah, what was that?" And he said, "Well, we were walking home for miles." And in his mind, I knew the way he thinks, this means it was a long way. It seemed like forever. It was a long journey. And we were walking home for miles. I said, "Who's we?" He said, "Me and my 2 sisters and mom." I'm not going to say their names. He said their names. He said, "Me and sisters and mom." And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, and we were walking home and mom found a sign that went down to a dark place. And she picked it up and went in and said, 'Come on, let's go.' And I said, 'No.'" And when he told, my mind was blown. Oh my God. Like this was a spiritual thing. This really hit me. Like I felt like my prayer was answered. I know he's going to be okay. Don't worry about it. I wrote it down. I memorized what he said because it was such a manifestation of just an answer to my prayer. I knew that he's going to be okay. Didn't mean he's okay right now, but I knew he's going to be okay. And man, it was crazy. Anyway, and then that year he came home from school one day and he's like, "Dad, I need you to sign this slip." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, what is it?" He said, "It's a think slip." I was like, "Is that good?" He goes, "Not really." I said, "Okay, well, tell me what it is or what's going on." And he said, "Well, I got in trouble because this kid pushed me. And I'd been trying to encourage him to stand up for himself. Don't let people push you around. Like, stand up for yourself, and I'll have your back. I'll support you." And so this kid pushed him, and he turned around and said something. And the teacher only heard what my son said. She didn't see the whole interaction. So he's in trouble for what he said, and I'm supposed to sign this thing. And I'm like, "What did you say, bud?" And he couldn't remember. And so I was like, "Okay, I don't know that I'm going to sign this because I don't know that you did anything wrong, but I'll talk to your teacher." And so I asked for her to call me, and I said, "This is what he said happened." And she's really cool. It's one of my favorite teachers. She said, "I didn't know that he'd been pushed, but she told me what he said." And when that... Sorry. When the kid pushed him, my son turned around and he said, "Your mom doesn't even want you." It's a pretty emotional thing for me. at the time, I didn't expect that. And when when she told me what he said, first split second reaction, I chuckled for a split second, like, whoa, and then it hit me that's what, like, he's projecting the worst thing in retaliation that he could feel or think onto that kid. Your mom doesn't even want you. So I talked to the teacher, and she was on the same page with me. He wasn't in trouble anymore. I didn't sign the slip. When he got home, I talked to him, and I just said, hey, bud. And I think that what I did here is create space for him to feel his emotions. And I said, hey, bud, I want to talk to you because I talked to your teacher, and I know you didn't remember what you said, but this is what she told me you said. I think he's afraid he's going to be in trouble because he's initially supposedly in trouble with her. And I said, hey, this is what she said that you said. And when I first heard that, I couldn't help but think in my heart that maybe you feel that. Maybe you feel that, like, your mom doesn't want you. And he started crying, and he nodded, and I just held him and hugged him, and he just bawled. And that year was a hard year for him in school because he was distracted. He's a smart kid. He was distracted by his feelings and not knowing how to feel them. And so for me as a parent going through a divorce, it was important to feel my feelings. It's such a hard turnaround. Like I said, it's a hard thing when you're in the middle of it. I couldn't be perfect for my kids. I couldn't be perfect for them. It was an imperfect scenario. I was imperfect, but I had to do what I had to do. I had to feel my feelings in order to model that for them, in order to be compassionate for them in the ways that they need. And if I showed that I was a rock and just feelings didn't affect me, it would have never helped them heal. And what I say is a hard turnaround, what I mean is that you can't heal overnight. And my kids didn't heal overnight. And at the time, I remember even when I started catching on to Lisa Romano, and I realized, wow, this is it. Like, this is something that can definitely help me heal. My first thinking, I even emailed at one point, and it was like, what do you have for kids to help them through this process? And there wasn't anything, and I was like, kind of frustrated over it at the time. But what I didn't understand is that as you heal, you help the world heal. And the energy that's there are things that happen with my kids by, I don't know what other word to use, but osmosis. I've seen my kids say things. Maggie said something about relationships that I've been learning these things and healing in ways of my thinking, but I hadn't shared certain thoughts with her. And one day she's talking about relationships with friends, and holy crap, the things that she said, her understanding, like the only way that it could have been possible that she had that deep of an understanding was because I was doing that work and healing. And there is that energy. It's quantum physics. If you ever start to study it, Lisa Romano talks about it a lot in Soul School. And they're discovering things in science that were just scraping the tip of the iceberg to understand. But it's real. Entanglement, certain things that I really believe Maggie understood this because I'd been working on understanding it, and I hadn't even shared it with her. It's insane. Anyway, and then with my older daughter, it was really hard watching her this year have to finally feel her emotions. Man, She had migraines, and it was hard, but I feel like by me healing, even though I feel really sad that it took such a long period of time, but man, it would have never happened if I didn't connect with my emotions and feel these things. So if you're going through a divorce, or if you got situations like that may have similarities, you gotta lean into your emotions. You gotta learn to feel them. You gotta learn to overcome that way if you really do want to help your kids and break these cycles. Thank you for listening. I'm still gonna do one that I mentioned it. I'm going to talk about some things pretty soon here, and I'm thinking maybe the next episode, about some things that I experienced that basically I'd equate it to sexual trauma, and just some things that are kind of embarrassing, and not, it relates to the most feeling, being able to connect with what I actually feel. And as a man, it felt shameful, but they're real things. And I think it'll be shocking to some people, to say the least. Thank you for listening, and please hit follow on Apple and Spotify, and send me a message if you feel that in your heart. I really appreciate hearing from you. Have a great day.